My name is Edward Robinson. I go by Ward. This is the film critic assignment for Psychology 412. And we are going to review the movie Badlands, directed by Terrence Malick and starring Martin Sheen and Sissy Spacek. It is a film about a crime spree that took place across a couple of Midwestern states in the late 50s. And Martin Sheen, the character, seems to qualify. I'm going to diagnose him with antisocial personality disorder, a provisional diagnosis. I have a backup provisional diagnosis that I like less, which is unspecified personality disorder. Antisocial personality disorder is F60.2. Unspecified personality disorder is F60.9. So when we open this movie, we meet Kit, who is kind of a gregarious and charming garbage man who's sort of lazy. He walks off the job in the middle of the day and gets fired. So right away we're seeing the lack of responsibility that's characteristic, one of the criteria for antisocial personality disorder. He's sort of wandering around the town. He sees Holly. Holly is 15. Kit is 25. And the town is bizarrely empty. So each of them is kind of walking around on their own, in their own little world. And they meet. They're sort of portrayed as lonely, alone figures. Holly's playing with her majorette baton, and Kit is very charming, engages her, and she kind of falls for his handsomeness and the fact that he's interested in her as this kind of dynamic older guy. They start to date. And Holly's father finds out about it and disapproves. Now, which makes sense, because there's a huge age difference. And at the time, Kit is a garbage man still, and so he disapproves. Holly's mom has died several years before, and so they were in Texas, and they moved. The father moved with the daughter, with Holly, to North Dakota. She doesn't really know anybody. So she's really isolated. The father, a 50s dad, very emotionally shut down, very proud, kind of hardworking sign painter guy who has stern rules but is very distant from Holly. So she's really kind of alone. She's the film's narrator, and along with kind of the dreamy atmospheric music and her sort of dreamy atmospheric voice that's laid over the film, you get this sense that she has this very naive willingness to just sort of follow along Kit's lead. Again, as you might imagine, because he becomes really the male, almost father figure in her life. The father has forbidden them from dating. They date anyway. He shoots Holly's dog to punish her. Kit goes over there to confront the dad. Holly's there. Kit brings a gun, ends up shooting the dad. And the two of them just sort of in a very dispassionate, not cruel way, but just sort of present but not really doing anything about it, and no histrionics, completely flat emotionally, watch the father slowly bleed out and die. So this gives us a huge amount of information about the potential diagnosis, because we have willingness to be violent, disregard for law, lack of empathy, right? And so we have all these qualities starting to really show up early in the film. They fake the death of themselves by making some recording saying we're going to kill ourselves, we're in love. It's kind of a Romeo and Juliet thing. They light the dad's house on fire. So they've got this plan to evade capture by pretending they've died. But then they steal the dad's car, which again shows the impulsivity that's one of the criteria of APD. Off they go, and they're really, they spend a short time in kind of like an Robinson Crusoe, Eden-like setting where they're fishing and dancing and this kind of thing. But sure enough, lawmen come and try to capture them. Kit kills all three of the lawmen. And he did this after the father was shot as well. But after these lawmen are shot, he sort of blames them. He said, well, they're bounty hunters and anybody would kill a bounty hunter. So again, with the characteristic of APD, any bad that's done is blamed on the person that it was done to. So after this point, they steal another car, and they're on the run driving that car for the rest of the movie. They head out across the plains, trying to avoid capture on the roads, and they're literally driving across just wide open dirt in the Badlands. And here's where we see that the movie's tone really reflects and supports this antisocial personality disorder that they're trying to portray. They're trying to portray this, I believe they're trying to portray this diagnosis to us, because you have these beautiful, wide, long shots of the car driving across just an empty expanse. And the shot is gorgeous, but you have this sort of very kind of aggressive looking driving car coming across, and it's very emotionally empty. And that's what we see over and over again, is that Kit has the willingness to engage in all kinds of antisocial behavior and doesn't display any emotion around it. Kit kills his friend, Cato. Again, they watch him bleed out slowly. He shoots him in the stomach, and they just kind of sit with him, and then he dies, and they just very dispassionately discuss it like they're talking about a news story. And the violence, again, emotionless and flat. The only time that Kit gets mad in the entire film is when Holly figures that she's fed up with this whole crime spree and decides not to go with him once the police have caught up to him. So he goes off, takes the car, and gets in a chase and gets caught. And they said it was pretty much the end of the movie. But I just want to reiterate that all of the criteria for APD are met, except one. That's a plot feature. A1 criteria: failure to conform to social norms with respect to lawful behavior. Where he killed their father, he killed his friend, he killed 3 lawmen, he lit their house on fire, stole 2 cars, probably a couple of strangers as well. Deceitfulness: he's repeatedly using aliases, changing his name, conning others for profit and pleasure, which is definitely what's going on. Impulsivity or failure to plan ahead, right? So these shootings were not planned ahead. He's not a calculated murderer. He's an impulsive killer, which in a way makes him more dangerous. But that's how it showed up with the dad, that showed it up with his friend, the 3 lawmen. None of that stuff was planned. But there is a very A5, reckless disregard for the safety of self or others. So he's on this crime spree. He's very dangerous, and it's completely haphazard whether he kills somebody or not. In fact, there's a scene where he gets into a whole scene inside some rich person's house. He ends up stealing their car, but not shooting them, and it's not entirely clear why. Consistent irresponsibility, as indicated by failure, A6, repeated failure to sustain constant work, right? He gets fired right out of the gate. And lack of remorse, being indifferent or rationalizing having been hurt, mistreated, or stolen from another. This is consistent throughout the entire film. Every single thing that he does that's harmful, he blames the person who's harmed. Criteria B is it got to be at least 18, and Kit is 25. Criteria D is it can't be concurrent with a schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, which it's not. But criteria C is that there must be evidence of a conduct disorder before the person is 15, and we just don't know. We meet Kit when he's 25, and we don't know anything about his history at all. He shows up as a complete blank slate to Holly, and that's all we get. And so because we don't have the full criteria, we have to say that it is a diagnosis of unspecified personality disorder. But I do that with reservations, because I feel quite strongly that it is APD, but I can't fully allow for that diagnosis. Just a couple last things I will say is that the differential diagnoses, there's no substance use disorder, there's no schizophrenia or bipolar, there are no other personality disorders, and the criminal behavior not associated with personality disorder, which would be like taking things for gain. That's just not what he does. It feels very much like APD, but I have to keep my provisional diagnosis as UPD. For now, that's it. I will upload my reference page in a second.